share my screen as well. Okay. So your question is, like once we learn SailPoint IAQ, whether we will be able to handle other IAM tools like Identity Now, OEM, etc. or not, right?
Yes, yes.
So the concept will be same. Okay, so whatever we are doing, so we discussed, right? So what are maybe the problems that we have in IAM, and the problems we solve are going to be same. Okay, but with respect to Identity Now and OEM, the tool itself will change. For example, in SailPoint, the way we install the tool and the kind of softwares that we use varies from SailPoint to OEM and from OEM to Identity Now. I mean, basically the platform varies, and also the options and the user interface will vary. For example, if we want to do account aggregation, or if we want to create some identities, the way we do that in SailPoint IAQ is different, and the way we do that in OEM will be different. Okay, in OEM, we call it as users, and in case of SailPoint, we call them as identity queue. Okay, and the way we schedule the task, everything will vary, but the underlying concept will be same. But one thing I can assure you, for example, if it is taking, let's say, 10 days for you to learn SailPoint IAQ, then you can learn OEM in 3 to 4 days. That much I can confirm. But after learning SailPoint IAQ, you will be well versed with the concepts, and you will be good with the basics of the IGA implementation, I can say. Like it will give you an overall generic idea of what exactly we are doing. Okay, but how we are doing that, it varies from tool to tool. So in order to understand how we are doing that, you may need to have some knowledge on that particular tool. Okay,
Yes.
for example, getting the user data is like something. What to do means like get employee details. So let's say this is the end goal. So in SailPoint, we will do aggregation and we'll get identity queue. Okay, so in case of OEM, we may say like recon, or they call it as reconcile, and they say like users, something like this. But at the end of the day, what we are going to do is same, but how we are going to do the same thing will vary. So in order to understand how to do that particular activity in that particular tool, you need to learn that particular tool. And basically, like when we observe the current market, we have more demand for SailPoint IAQ. And next to SailPoint IAQ, we have demand for Identity Now and maybe Savient. But OEM, I don't see much also.
Yeah.
It's very less.
Yes. So, what is the difference between when we learn IAQ, can we able to perform a task on a cloud platform like Savient or SailPoint Identity Now?
Yeah, it's again pretty much same. Like after learning SailPoint IAQ, you will very easily get this identity now, because most of the concepts between SailPoint IAQ and Identity Now are same. They are like from the same vendor, right? Most of the things are same. In case of Savient also, it's same, but the terminology and all varies. The UI,
Got it. Yeah.
those things varies. But
Yes.
you'll
Yeah.
be able to learn. That is very sure. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Kalyan.
Yeah.
I got it.
Okay. And how about you, Shreya? Are we good? Do you have any doubts from our previous sessions?
No, Kalyan, thank you.
Okay, so yesterday we were discussing about the differences between SailPoint IAQ and Identity Now, right? So we have understood the differences from the infrastructure point of view. It means like we understood that SailPoint IAQ is an on-premise tool and Identity Now is a cloud tool. And we also know on-premise in the sense like we have to install it, we have to take care of the patches, upgrades, everything. And in case of cloud, we will just use it as a subscription based model, like ready to use kind of approach. And also with respect to customizations, SailPoint IAQ offers very detailed customization. It means when we go with SailPoint IAQ, the complete control will be within the developer's hand. We can do minimum to the in-depth customization in SailPoint IAQ, but in case of identity now, the amount of customization that we can perform is drastically reduced because most of the control is within SailPoint. For example, if you want to write a particular rule in SailPoint IAQ, like for writing the rule for customization, there is no limit. You can write it, you can implement it. But in case of identity now, there are certain kind of rules that we can write internally and implement it. But if you want to write some other kinds of rules, we cannot implement it on our own. There is a separate format. We have to write our code in that particular format by following that particular standards. We need to give that code to SailPoint themselves, like who are basically the identity now service providers. And once we hand over the code to SailPoint, they will review it and they will implement it. So until and unless they're doing all the process, we need to wait. Okay, so there are some limitations for the amount of customization that we can do with identity now. So these are some major differences. And which one to choose? For example, if we are an organization, we need to implement one IAM tool to our company. Okay, so we are given a choice to choose between SailPoint IAQ and Identity Now. So what are the points that I need to consider in selecting any one of these tools? Okay, the first one is data security. We need to think how important our data is. Okay, so some organizations, they have their own setup, they have their own infrastructure, they have their own network security, everything is present, and their business is based on their data only. Their data is very critical for them. So for that kind of customers, they try to prefer SailPoint IAQ because in SailPoint IAQ, the data will be present within our own data centers. It will not be taken outside the perimeter of the organization. So if the requirement of the company is something like this, where they don't want to let the data go outside their perimeter, then such kind of customers will prefer SailPoint IAQ. Okay. Let's suppose it's a startup or it's a small company where they don't have any such strong security internally, and they want to get started immediately. They don't have time to set up all the infra, everything, domain centers, everything. So they may go for identity now because it's a small company and they cannot invest much time and money in setting up all the infra. So to get quickly started, they will go for identity now, where they will get a quick subscription and they will get started work. Okay. So, and also my organization is very big and it's very complicated. So wherein I need to do a lot of customizations. Okay, in that case, I may go for IAQ because IAQ is offering me more in-depth customization. But if I don't have any such complex implementation scenarios, then I can quickly go for identity now. So it completely depends on the organization, like how much complicated, how important it is for them. So based on that, they will choose between SailPoint IAQ and identity now. Okay, in case of identity now, data will not be stored in our data centers. The data will be stored in cloud. So this identity now, like basically they are using AWS cloud services. Underlying this identity now, they are using AWS for its implementation. So the data that is being generated, that will be stored in this cloud. Okay, if our organization is something where you don't want to store any data outside the organization, or if we don't want to risk our data to be kept in somewhere else, then we may not prefer identity. We may go for IAQ. Okay, so these are the some of the criteria that the organizations consider when choosing between SailPoint IAQ and identity now. Okay, so at least for now, we know like what is this SailPoint IAQ, what is this IAM domain, and where exactly this SailPoint fits in. We now understood, right, what work we are going to do. So our work is to manage identity and their respective access. Okay, and we have also seen what are the problems solved, and we have also seen the different types of tools available, and among them we choose SailPoint, and within SailPoint also we know what are the different tools available, and we have also understood why we have different tools from the same company. We have seen the differences, and we have also seen what is the scenarios in which we choose one of the tools. So finally, we decided to go with SailPoint IAQ. Okay, so now let's deep dive. Let's deep dive into SailPoint IAQ and get to know about this in depth. Okay, so basically, this SailPoint IAQ application will be implemented as a web application. Okay, so whenever we are going to implement our SailPoint IAQ, we basically need to perform the installation and all, right? We need to set up the tool first in order to use it, as this is an on-premise tool. In order to set up the tool, we need to understand how exactly the tool works and how the infra of the tool is. So we are getting to know that this SailPoint IAQ will be implemented as a web application. So first of all, what do we mean by web application? Any idea? In our day-to-day life, we use a lot of applications, right? Different types of application. So among them, this web application is one. So what exactly we mean by web application?
Which works on the network web browser.
Yes, absolutely correct. It works on web browser. And any other thoughts? Okay. So it's something that works based out of web browser. Okay. We have different types of applications. Let's understand that. First one, native applications, web application, and third one is mobile applications. So when we say native application, we get the installer, we install it, and we use it in that particular machine only. Let's suppose if we install a DB server, or let's suppose if we install any software, then if I am installing it in my laptop, it will be only specific to my laptop. Let's take any game. If you install a game, that game will be present in our laptop. Like we can play it in that laptop only. So which is nothing but a native application specific to that particular machine where we are installing. On the other hand, we have something called web application. So when we say web application, all we need to use that application is a browser. Okay, it's another kind of generic application, let's say. If you have a browser, no matter where you are, you can use that application. Okay, let's say like Amazon. So Amazon is a web application. So you can access that Amazon from your mobile, or you can access it from your laptop, or you can access it from any other browser, like from any other system. Okay, so this is web application. And mobile application, in the sense, we install the app in our mobile and we use it. Okay, so among them, SailPoint IAQ is going to be installed as web application. So in order to understand web application, let's understand how the architecture of a web application will be, like the basic architecture of a web application. So let me show you the high level architecture. So any web application basically works on a client server architecture. Okay. So what do we mean by this client server? So here we have two parties involved. One is client and one is server. Okay. So client is something from where we initiate the request. Okay, let's say we want to access a shopping site called Amazon. So in order to access that, we need something called browser, and from the browser we will hit a request. We will say www.amazon.com. So that is the request we are making from the client. So here client will be our web browser. So from this web browser, we will be making a request, okay, for getting a particular website. So when we do the request, like soon after completion of request, we'll get the home page of that particular application, right? Like how that is happening. So how that is exactly happening is we have something called server. Okay, we call them as application servers or web servers or containers. There are different names. So basically we have some servers, and whatever may be our application, right? So that application must be hosted in that particular server. You take any application, you take Amazon or you take let's say Instagram, Facebook, or any other application, even the basic website that we access. So basically that will be hosted in a particular server. After hosting that in a particular server, it will be exposed to internet. Okay, we will give a particular URL to our server, or we'll get a particular URL to the application hosted in that server, and it will be exposed to internet. So once that is done, whenever we make a request from the client will be connected to internet. It comes over internet and looks for the system to which that particular URL is mapped, and it identifies the system, and within the system it identifies our application, and it receives the request that is sent. Let's say if we say the request as www.amazon.com, based on the URL it identifies the servers, and after identifying a server it identifies the application, and once the application is identified, whatever may be the request that is received, it will be processed. This Amazon.com request will be processed, and it will send a response back to the client. And whatever may be the response that we are receiving, it is nothing but the home page we are able to see on our browser page. So this is how basically the high level architecture of a web application will be. It's basically a client server architecture, wherein in order to use that, we need a client. It means a browser. Sometimes we may use any API testing tools like Postman also. Okay, so that will also act as client, but from user point of view, mostly it will be browser, and we will need a server. So from in the server only we have to put our application. So after putting the application in a server, then only we can use it. Okay, so this is basically the client server architecture, and within this client server architecture, we have a particular mechanism followed. We call that as request response mechanism. It means from client we'll make a request for a particular page or for a particular option. So that request will be processed within the web server or any web server or application, whatever we call it, and it will send a response back to the client. So the job of client is to send a request, and the job of server is to give a response back. So basically it's a request response mechanism involved. Every time, like if you are interacting with a web browser, it's a request that you are making, and the request is processed, and we are getting a response back. So this is how at the very high level web application works. Okay, so based on this request response mechanism. Okay, so if we want to extend this architecture, we can do that. For example, you have your a server available which is basically processing the request. For example, for your server, if there is any requirement to store the data, then it may need to connect to the database again. Within the backend to the server, it may connect to the database. And if there is any requirement to store the data, it may store the data in a separate database server. Let's suppose your application that you are accessing, it has a registration form. Okay, so once you fill in the details in the form, let's say we have first name, last name, your email, date of birth, all of those fields present. So once you fill the form and hit submit, that request will be sent to the server first, and within the server it will process, and the server thinks that data needs to be stored permanently, okay, somewhere. So in that case, it will communicate to the database and it will store the data received, like the first name, last name, email, database, I mean, date of birth, whatever is received. So it will permanently store that in the database. Okay, so this way, within our client server architecture, we can bring in a database server also, which can help us in storing the information permanently. Okay, so this is how basically the client server architecture works, and most of the time our web applications follows this client server architecture, and optionally we can bring in the database into picture in order to store any data. Okay, is it clear or any doubts in this?
No, Kalyan, it's clear.
Thanks for confirming. Okay, so now that we understood the client server architecture, right, let's try to learn some other generic stuff. So now we'll be discussing a particular topic which is a generic one and which will be helpful in our everyday's communication and wherever we go. Like, this understanding really helps a lot. It is relevant but not a SailPoint specific topic. Okay, let's see what our next discuss this. Okay, understood. We have been discussing that, right? So in the client server architecture, we have discussed about server, and we are telling web server, application server, and we are also telling the database server. So basically, what is a server? What is our definition of a server? According to you, whenever we say server, what comes to your mind? What do you think of?
Uh, which will enable to run the program, I mean, any program or anything. So we need a server.
Okay. It's very good and generic definition, basically. I really like this definition. It perfectly defines what a server is. But we are going to discuss in depth, but this single definition, it basically covered all of those. Nice. Okay, so any other definitions, any other thought process? Okay, let's quickly deep dive. So whenever we are using the term server, we should be very careful and we should understand clearly in which context we are using the term. Okay, so based on the context in which we are using the term server, the complete scenario will change. Okay, let's suppose whenever we say the term server, we can categorize it majorly into two parts. So server as hardware and server as software, right? So on a top level, primarily we can categorize a server into two ways. So one, server as a hardware, and another one, server as a software. So whenever we say server as a hardware, you might have seen in organizations, they have something called DCs. They call it as data centers. In data centers, they will have racks, right? In the racks, they physically keep servers. It means they will have a RAM, they will have a processor, they will have a hard disk to store the data, and they will give power supply. They will connect multiple servers together using LAN and all. So by setting up all of the things, we will have something called as server, and which is nothing but server as a hardware. Even we can build our own server. So if you take any PC and if you add some RAM, or if you add some processor, or if you add some like storage, everything that becomes a server, right? So that is what we call as server as a hardware. It means the physical component that put together, that basically is used for processing anything, processing any software, then that is called server, and it's nothing but server as hardware. Okay, so mostly the servers in our data centers. So this is what we refer to as server as hardware. When it comes to server as software, again, we have various kinds of softwares. Okay, for example, we have something called operating systems of servers. Operating system server. So we have Linux, we have Windows Server, like Windows Server 2016, Windows Server 2019, 22, etc. In Linux also we have something like RHGL, or we have Kali Linux, etc. Right? So we call these things also as servers. So when we use the general notation, whenever we take Windows Server 2016, which is nothing but an operating system, but we refer this operating system also as a server. Okay, so whenever we are referring an operating system as server, this is what we mean by OS server. This is nothing but operating system server. Okay, on the other hand, we have something called application servers or web servers. Both are used interchangeably. So whenever we say application server or web server, we have something like Apache Tomcat, and we have WebLogic, we have WebSphere, we have JBoss, we have Glassfish. So all of these are separate softwares. Okay, so these are separate softwares which are specially developed to run web applications. So we have discussed, right? If we want to expose an web application in order to be available to use, we have to host that in a particular server. So the particular software which basically helps us in getting the response, the particular software that helps in processing the request and providing the response back is nothing but these application servers or web servers. And examples of these application or web servers are our Apache Tomcat, which is from Apache. We have something like WebLogic. WebLogic is from Oracle. It's an application server from Oracle. So we have WebSphere, we have JBoss, Glassfish. All these are web application servers, and whenever we use the general notation, we call them as servers in general. Okay. So next to these web servers, we have something called database servers. Something called database servers. So when we say database server, we have Oracle DB. We have something like MySQL server, and we have MS SQL server, Microsoft SQL server. So again, these are servers, but the purpose is different. So whenever we say server, here we discuss these as softwares, right? This operating system is nothing but a software. It's not a physical application. Okay, so this web service, it's nothing but a software. It's a separate software which is meant for a particular purpose. So Apache Tomcat is a software which is meant for like processing the web applications. Similarly, MySQL is also a software that is basically help to provide database services. Okay, so in this case, we have something called database server, which is again a software. Okay, so when we refer the term server, underlying, we may be referring any one of these. Okay, so during our communication, so whenever we speak with any stakeholder, when we talk to any customer, or if you talk to our team members internally, whenever we use the term server, or whenever the others are using the term server, we should be able to understand among all these types of server, which one we are actually referring. Okay, for example, let's say you're in a group meeting. Okay, someone will say like, our application is not working, the server is down. Okay, when you say the server is down, is it the database server that is down, or is it the application server that is down, or is it the operating system server that is down, or is it the complete data center is down, the hardware is itself is removed? So we need to clearly understand this part. So that's the reason why like we are having this in-depth discussion. Okay, is it clear or any doubts in this?
No, Kalyan.
So now that we understood that this SailPoint is going to be a web application, and we have also discussed the different types of servers that are involved, next let's discuss what are the software components required for our SailPoint IAQ. SailPoint IAQ. Software and hardware components. Okay, so here I am ruling out one standard requirement, that is hardware. So in order to do anything, first of all, we need an hardware machine. So that hardware machine could be your laptop, or if you're implementing it in real time, either it could be a hardware in your data center, or it could be a virtual machine you have taken subscription from any cloud model. So let's forget about the hardware, like we are assuming that it will be present by default. Okay, so I'm ruling out these hardware components as well. Let's discuss the software components. Okay, so the SailPoint IAQ being an web application, it works by using Java technology. Whenever we say web applications, we can develop web applications using different technologies. We can use JavaScript, we can use Node.js, something like that, or we can use some programming languages like PHP, or we can write web applications using Python. We can use any of such languages, right? Among them, the programming language that is used for developing SailPoint IAQ is Java. Okay. So in our definition for SailPoint IAQ, we can simply say the SailPoint IAQ is an Java-based web application. So it's a web application, we know, but the underlying technology is Java. Okay. So as this is a Java-based application, in order to run this application, we need one software component, the first and foremost one, which is Java. Okay. So next to Java, we need an web server. Now we are clear, right? Whenever we say web server, it's very clear. So it must be any one of these, Tomcat, WebLogic, or anything. So why we need a web server? In order to run any web application, we need to host the web application in a web server. So as SailPoint IAQ is a web application, we need a web server to run it. Okay. So next to web server, we need an database server. Okay, so when we are dealing with our SailPoint IIQ application, we basically store the data. Okay, we'll be like generating lot of information, and we'll be fetching lot of information from other applications as well. So all that information should be stored permanently in a database. So in order to do that, we need a database server. Okay, so once we have all of this, we need SailPoint IIQ itself. So we need the installer, right? We need to get the SailPoint IIQ installer. So once we have this web server and database server in hand along with Java, so we need to have that SailPoint IIQ so that we can host this application. We can install the SailPoint IIQ and use it. Okay, so these are the major software components required for installing SailPoint IIQ. Okay, so now that we understood the dependent softwares, we can go ahead and download all of these softwares and we can get started with our implementation. But again, if I want to install Java, there are so many versions, right? We have Java 8, 9, 10, I think it's 26 or 26 version currently going on. So there are so many versions of Java available. So which one I need to install? So this is my question. And again, when we say web server, in the market, we have different types of web servers. So among them, which one to choose? Let's say I have decided to go with WebLogic. Even WebLogic will offer different versions. Which particular version to select? So this is the major question, right? So in order to find out the software versions or softwares that we need to use, first we need to understand SailPoint IAQ software version. Okay, versions of SailPoint IAQ. So just like any other software, within SailPoint also, we do have different versions of it. Okay, so in order to decide which versions of the dependent softwares to use, first we need to decide which version of SailPoint IAQ we have to install. Okay, so once we decide the version of SailPoint IAQ, accordingly we can select between the rest of the softwares and also the versions. Okay, so before choosing the SailPoint IAQ version, let's understand how the SailPoint IAQ versions will work. Okay, so the latest version of SailPoint, that is currently available in market is 8.4, and next to the version we have something called patch set p1. Okay, so whenever we are telling about SailPoint versions, we basically have two things. First one will be the base version. So base version will always be numbered something like this. So we have the versions like 7.6, we have 8.0, 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, and finally 8.4. So previous versions are there, 6 are there, 7.1, 7.2, 7.3 are there. Like this, we number the SailPoint base version something like this. Okay, and the latest version available in the market is 8.4. So this is called a base version. Okay, you might know some other tools might be like version separately. Like if you take any tool like ServiceNow, they basically name the versions with country names. They will give country codes. And if you take our Android itself, we pretty much know they will name the versions by using some chocolate or any sweet names, like basically like chocolates or candies. They'll provide names like that, right? So that is different way of versioning. But in case of SailPoint IAQ, we do the versioning with numbers, something like this, and this is called base version. And to every base version, we have something called patch. Okay, so the patch will be notated with P. So we can say P1, P2, P3, something like that. the number may differ. Like for each base version, we will have individual patch versions. Let's say for 8.3, I may have P1, P2, and P3 only. And immediately it may go for P4. Let's say for 8.2, I only have P1, P2. And for 8.1, it might go from P1 till P7. So it varies. So depending on the particular base version, the number of patches that we have may vary. Okay. But whenever you are saying SailPoint version, always make sure that you are referring the base version and you are also referring the patch. Okay. And we need to understand one major difference between these versions. So we have this base version, right? And we have this patch. Okay. Let's suppose we have a scenario where we need to upgrade. Okay. So the current version of SailPoint is 8.0 and the version we want to upgrade to is 8.3. So in case of base version, if you want to move from 8.0 to 8.2 or let's say 8.3, you have to pass through all the intermediate versions. It means like if you want to move from 8.0 to 8.3, first you have to upgrade to 8.1 and from 8.1 you have to upgrade to 8.2 and from 8.2 you need to upgrade to 8.3. So this way, in order to upgrade from one version to another version, if there are intermediate base versions, we need to go through all the intermediate base versions to reach the final one that we want. Okay, so here they are not cumulative. It means from 8.1, from 8.0 to 8.1, what are maybe the changes that are coming from 8.1? It is not like basically directly inherited. For example, if 8.0 is the initial one we want and 8.3 is the final one. So if I directly install 8.3, it will not get the changes from 8.2 and 8.1. It will not immediately get the changes. We have to keep adding the changes. Okay, so the changes will be specific to each version. So if you want to like make those changes added, like you need to go to that version, make sure that the changes are added, validated, and then you need to go to other version and make sure the changes for this particular version is added, and then only like we can go for other one. So this is the scenario with base version. Whereas in case of patch, it is always cumulative. So these are not cumulative. So patches are always cumulative. Okay, so it means patch will be specific to each version separately. For example, your final target is 8.3 P3. Okay, right now you are in 8.0, like let's say P1. So from 8.0 P1, first you will upgrade the base version. You'll go to 8.1, 8.2, and 8.3. First, the base version need to be upgraded. And after upgrading to the target base version, then we can apply patch of our base version. Okay. So in this case, patches are cumulative. It means if you want to go to P3 version, so you need not to install P1, then you need not to go to P2. So this is not required. You can directly install P3. So if you want to install 8.3 P3, so first the base version, sequentially you have to upgrade to 8.3. Once 8.3 is installed, like we are in 8.3, we can directly install patch set 3. So what are maybe the changes that are present in patch set 2 and patch set 1 that will be directly present in patch set 3 itself? Okay, so this way the patches are cumulative and the base versions are not cumulative. Okay, so this is something we have to consider for upgrade, but at least now we have some idea about SailPoint versions. So how the SailPoint versioning will differ and how the conventions are followed. Okay, now let's decide what is the version of SailPoint IAQ that we want to use. Okay, so for our lab purpose, we are going to install SailPoint IAQ 8.2, and we are going to install patch set 3 or patch set 4, anything, any one patch, at least not the basic one. We are not installing patch 1, something more than that, just to make sure that this thing works, to confirm that this is not cumulative. And I mentioned the latest version of SailPoint available in the market is 8.2. If the latest version is 8.2, why we are not going for 8.2? Okay, so there are two reasons for that. First of all, most of the latest versions will not be stable. We may have some bugs, and even when we implement SailPoint for any customers, the customers will have their own versioning policy. So the versioning policy will be something like n-1 or n-2, like that. It means if the latest version available in the market is n, the customers always prefers n-1, and means the one version less than the latest version. Reason being is, so in all latest versions, we know they will add new features, at the same time new bugs may come. So if they are not sure whether that version is stable or not, people mostly decide to go for one version below that. So we are following a similar approach, and also we are going for 8.2 by leaving a scope for upgrade. For example, if you want to practice upgrade, if you are in 8.4 already, then it is very difficult for you to upgrade to any other version. You cannot practice upgrade. Okay, so if you are in 8.2, then you have a chance to upgrade to 8.4, and even the upgrade is not a quick upgrade. As I mentioned, the intermediate upgrade needs to be done. So in order to move to 8.4, you need to go to 8.3, and then only you can go to 8.4. So for leaving scope for all of this, we are going with 8.2. Okay. So now that we have decided which version of SailPoint IAQ to use, now based on this, we need to decide the other software versions that we are going to use. Okay. So for now, I will stop the session here for today. And in tomorrow's session, we will see what are the different softwares that we are going to use for our SailPoint IAQ 8.2 version. And among the software that we are selecting, we will also see what is the version that we are going to choose. And we'll also see how to download these softwares. Okay, we'll discuss all these topics tomorrow. For now, I'm leaving the rest of the time for doubts clarification. So feel free to express your doubts if you have any. So it could be a technical doubt or generic one, anything. So we need to understand both concept and the technical things. So if you have any doubts, please let me know. Like at least is that explanation clear, or you have any feedback?
No, Kalyan, it's clear. But
Mm.
I do have some confusion between the version upgrades, like if
Okay.
it's P1, P3, P4.
Mhm.
So, just a minute, sorry. So actually, if sorry for that. So if we have patches like P1, P3, P4, as you said, for 8.1, it's P1 to P7, right?
Yeah.
So if we change from 8.0 to 8.1, then we can directly upgrade patch to P7, right? And if it's then 8.2, then it's a patch is different, right?
Yes.
As a, like a P, it's maybe a like P2 or P1. So
Yeah.
the patches will differ for different versions. So it's not same. Like if we have P7, then we can continue with the P7 like that on
Yes.
8.3.
Yes. Exactly. So okay, let me uh, put it this way also. For example, the base version, this much, this thing is very clear, right? The versioning will be like in a particular sequence: 8.0, 8.1, 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, something like this. Okay. So for each base version, we don't know how many patches SailPoint will create. Okay. So base versions are basically used for major updates. If there are major feature changes or if there are major bug fixes, so those kind of things will be handled through the base version. In case of patches, they will either give the small fixes. Let's say if any bug is identified in any version, let's say in 8.1 there is a bug identified. So in order to fix the bug, they need not to wait till the next major version releases. So they can simply add a patch, so which will serve as a quick fix for that. Okay, so this way, for each base version, SailPoint releases patches. So whenever they release patch, we don't know for each version how many patches they will release. Okay, let's say in 8.1, from P1 to P7, they have released the patch. They have not released P8. They might have simply gone for 8.2. Okay, so this way, like we don't know the patching number. So how many patches they will release for each version. So we have to check that. I'll show you while downloading the SailPoint IAQ software. So while showing how to download the software, I'll show you how to check for each base version how many patches are released. So among the patches released, we can go for either the latest patch, or let's say after installing the latest patch, if you say like you have a bug, then you can go for a one version of patch before that, something like that. This we can decide accordingly. I
Yeah.
hope it's clear for you, Monica. You still have
Yes.
any?
Yeah, I'm clear on that. But if we do it practical, then we get more clear on that, like
Yeah, yeah,
how the
definitely.
patch will look like that.
Yes. Yeah, anyhow, we will do that. Okay. So any other doubts?
Nothing, Kalyan. I'm good from my end.
Okay. So if you have any feedback about the explanation also, please let me know if I'm going too slow, or if I am, if you feel like we are discussing unnecessary stuff, or you directly want to jump into the technical things. If you have any such feedback, let me know. Accordingly, like we can proceed.
Sure.
Okay. Just for your information, like many of the times we are basically deviating from our actual SailPoint concept and we are discussing some generic stuff. Like today we have discussed about the servers and all, right? So I have added all those pointers by considering some real world scenarios. So people are confusing basically. So whenever we say server, they don't know like what is server and where to go and where to touch it. So if you say like the server is not working or we need to check the server logs, they don't know whether to check the application server logs or to check the database server logs or whether to check the operating system. So we should not be that dumb whenever we are implementing SailPoint. So we should be able to grasp those things. So that's why in order to make sure like you are aware of all those things, I have given that explanation separately. Okay. Okay, fine. So if you don't have any doubts, like please feel free to drop. We'll connect in tomorrow's session and we'll continue with the remaining topics. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, Kalyan.